America's pastime is, was, and always will be shooting.
Hello everyone, Finn and Flask here. So today I'm going to be talking about lubricants for muzzle loading. So there's a lot of things to consider with muzzle loading lubricants. You can have liquids and you can have more fatty kind of stuff, okay? But you also have to think of it in two different ways as well, because different lubricants are needed for different things. You have like a long arm and a revolver. Revolver lubes are different, and we're going to cover them as well. First, I'm going to start with long arm lubricants. Okay, there are two different kinds in general of long arm lubricants. You have your fats and then you have your liquids. Okay, so I'm going to show you a little bit about some of them right now. Before we get into the meat of the video, if you wish to support the channel, you should check out my eBay store where I sell muzzle loading accessories. It'll be linked in the description. You have commercially available things like Maxi Lube and Boar Butter, and you have things like mink oil. This was purchased from Track of the Wolf. When I'm hunting, I prefer to use fats. Okay, I'll use the mink oil or I'll use Boar Butter or that Maxi Lube. I think Boar Butter and Maxi Lube are essentially the same thing, just different brands. And that stuff is commercially available pretty much anywhere you can buy muzzle loading supplies. Then you have other types of fats that are available. You have things like mink oil, you have things like tallows, and people will use things like Crisco. But Crisco has kind of gone away because I think they started adding salts to it, and you don't want any salts in any of your fatty lubricants or even your liquid lubricants. So stay away from fats that are salty. When it comes to liquid lubricants, I use liquid lubricants when I'm actually out just plinking, messing around. And what I use for my main liquid lubricant is just spit. I just put a patch on my mouth and I soak it up and I put a ball down. I do that mostly on woods walks. I just have my patches in my pouch, pull them out, soak them, and shoot. But there are a lot of other commercially available liquid lubricants. Okay, one of the guys who I was shooting with last weekend at a woods walk said he started actually using 70% ballistol and 30% water as a liquid lubricant. And he says he's had good luck with that. There's also things like Mr. Flintlock that's commercially available, and some people really like that. I've never used it. I know that Blackpowder Maniac shooter likes shooting Mr. Flintlock lube. And then there's also people, if you look online, there's people who make up all kinds of crazy lubricants that are liquid and they're supposed to be good for cold weather and stuff like that. But in cold weather, if I'm hunting and stuff like that, I'm just going to use a fat. I'm just probably going to use Boar Butter or mink oil. Another common liquid lubricant is olive oil. You can just soak your patches in olive oil, or you can use it for muzzle loading shotguns or smooth bores. It's really good for lubricating the cards. When it comes to actually using fatty lubricants, there are essentially two ways how you can apply the lubricant. One, you can just take the can and smudge it on there like this. When it's still hard, just make sure you get the whole thing. You don't need to really do both sides, but just get that patch completely lubed so that the lube is actually in contact with the barrel. The other way how you can do it is more of a bulk thing, and that's when you're actually preparing for shooting multiple times. You can actually heat up the fat till it becomes a liquid and then just soak the patches in it. With things like liquid lubricants, you can pre-cut your patches, put them inside of an old tin. You can just fill the tin with the pre-cut patches, put in Mr. Flintlock olive oil or that ballistol mix I just suggested. Some people will take like an old medicine bottle and fill it with a liquid and then stick basically a roll of patching in there and just let it completely absorb. Then you just basically drain it, and whatever's left just into the material stays, and all the extra just drips right back out into the container. When it comes down to it, for revolvers, you still should use lubricants. I know that originally Colt suggested to just load it with a powder and smash the ball in or the projectile and shoot it. That was the original way how it was described to be used. But it doesn't really make sense because it gets harder and harder and harder to shoot it and cycle it if it's not lubricated. So the way how I generally lubricate my black powder revolvers is I use the Wonder Wads. I think that's the perfect way how to do it, and it just works pretty much every time for me. Then some other people suggest things like covering the faces of the cylinder with a lubricant. I've used things like mink oil over it, and I've used things like boar butter over it, and they're just a little too soft. It just kind of runs off if it's not cold out. So what a lot of people do is they make mixes of a fat with beeswax, okay? Like the common ones I hear are tallow and beeswax, 50-50. Mike Bellevue from Duelist 1944 likes using lamb's tallow and beeswax. Some other people use like beef tallow to mix with the beeswax. Some people even use Crisco. That's the old Crisco. I don't know what's going on with that. That was a thing for a lot of years, people using Crisco. A new recipe I heard, which my friend uses, is I think it's 40% tallow. I think he uses beef tallow, and he uses 10% coconut oil and 50% beeswax. The beeswax solidifies that lubricant pretty good, and it doesn't just run away when it's warm out. Another reason why some people like to lube the face of the cylinders on revolvers is because of chain fires. Some people feel that it actually helps prevent chain fires, which is multiple detonating cylinders at the same time with the pull of one trigger. And I'm not really a big fan of thinking it's like that, unless if the cylinders are really chewed up. I just think that the actual ball going right down onto it is going to stop anything. It's a physical barrier for any kind of ember. But do whatever you like. If you want to be safe, cover the face of the cylinder with some kind of lubricant. Just remember, this is like a 3-part series. I did balls and suggested powder charges as one video. I did patching in my last video, and this video is basically just lubricants. So you want to check out all of them. I would really appreciate it if you did that. If you appreciate my content, I'd really appreciate it if you liked, subscribed, and shared this video with friends. Feel free to leave a comment. I'm always willing to learn from my comments. And let's fight the algorithm, get me pushed up in the algorithm a bit. So thank you very much for watching. Have a wonderful day.